All right, everybody, I am back and getting ready to record my daily podcast here. You guys can hang out with me, leave me comments. We can talk about it later. Today's podcast is called The 1980's, The Time That Rock Forgot. I'm going to explain to you guys in detail here what it's all about. So let me go ahead and get started with this here. I have my recording software up. I've got my intro music ready to go, and we're going to get it done. Here we go. In 5, 4, 3, today's Rockin Rant. You hear all this great music on classic rock radio. Okay, somebody let my cat down here. That was great. They totally screwed me up. All right, guys, sorry about that. I have to retake that now. Very uncool. Edit, undo, recorded media. Here we go. In 5, 4, 3. Welcome to today's Rockin Rant. You hear all this great music on classic rock radio. Music, tons of music. All the bands from the 70s. Led Zeppelin, the Stones, Aerosmith, Deep Purple, Sabbath, etc. You hear all this great music from the 90s. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, etc. Over and over on classic rock radio. There was a decade, guys, in between the 70s and the 90s. Where is it? Why aren't you playing it? That's what we're going to... I have a really good idea why, and that's what we're going to be talking about on today's Rockin Rant. You're listening to the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus, changing rock history one podcast at a time. Okay, technical difficulties. This today's podcast has been fraught with technical difficulties. We're going to do it again. Edit, do recorded media. Reaper preferences, change that. Oh, it's always something, isn't it, with this crazy computer crap. Here we go. Let's do it again. In 5, 4, 3. So you listen to your favorite classic rock station, and you're hearing all this great music from the 70s. You know, the Stones, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, on and on and on. And you're hearing a lot of cool music from the 90s. You're hearing Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, etc. But, guys, there's a decade in between there. At least I remember one. It's called the 1980's. This music is grossly underrepresented on classic rock radio, and I think I know why. You want to know why? Stick around. You're listening to the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus, changing rock history one podcast at a time. Everybody, welcome back to the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus, Rockin Rant. Once again, our website, real quick, is LoudiniRockandRollCircus.com. Please check back often for a lot of really cool podcasts. You've got these Rockin Rants, you've got our live show, you've got interviews. There's all kind of cool stuff there, specials, guitar videos, all kind of fun stuff. So you can check all that out at LoudiniRockandRollCircus.com. So let's get into today's show. You know, I heard somebody called Eddie Trunk's show and talked about this a few days ago, but they didn't really get to the answer as to why this is true. And as I was saying in the beginning, that we have these classic rock stations, they're playing all the stuff from the 70s, they're playing all the stuff from the 90s, and there's like very little being played from the 1980s. And it really kind of I think it's kind of troubling because that music was huge, huge. I mean, these are bands that sold millions and millions and millions of albums. They toured the world. They played, giant stadiums. They played giant festivals. They were wildly influential at the time on other musicians that were coming up. It was a really important time for the guitar, for the electric guitar and guitar, the evolution of guitar. But you hardly hear anything about that today. And I want to, and I have an idea as to why. I think that, well, first of all, I think there is a bit of, ultimately, I believe it comes down. Let me just put it right there because I'm kind of pedaling around it, but I should just say I believe that it has to do with political correctness. The 80s were the big, people call it the big 80s. It was an era where things were big. We had Ronald Reagan in the White House. It was a time of, for a lot of people, it was a time for prosperity. Maybe it's a little bit of an embarrassment because, there's a sort of backlash now against, anybody who makes money must be like ripping people off or something like that. A bunch of silly ideas that we have in our heads right now. These bands were on MTV. They were loud. They were proud. They had bad boy personas. All of that is really kind of like, especially for white guys. White guys are not supposed to have bad boy personas. We're supposed to be sensitive and caring and nurturing. But that was not what that music was about. And that really isn't what rock is about. Rock is about, balls out, in your face, and I think that like what happened is rap kind of picked that ethic, if you will, up. They picked that mantle up and carried it. Rock became the sort of thing for sensitive musicians in the 90s, and it very quickly faded away, and I think for that exact reason. Ultimately, I think that there is just some shame, political correctness and some shame about that decade, and it's completely unreasonable. These bands were loud, they were proud, they were in your face. It's great music. It's music that was fun, and something I think that we've forgotten about rock. It's so interesting. There's a lot of bands that are 70s throwback bands, but there aren't that many that are like 80s throwback bands that are like, or I shouldn't say throwback, influenced by 80s guitar rock. Very few. There's Love Stallion and a couple of bands like that are out there. They're very few and far between. Way more bands, Sheepdogs, Rival Sons, Greta Van Fleet, heavily influenced by 70s. I think a lot of these acoustic artists that are out today are, kind of like, influenced by the 70s. So the 80s is unrepresented, I think, mainly because of this sort of politically correct idea. I know exactly, I have a pretty good idea, and I think I could prove it to you exactly why that is. And I will do another video on it because this is a pretty big topic. We can get into a lot more, but ultimately, guys, it comes down to political correctness and unfairly shaming these guys that made this amazing music at an amazing time. Yes, the 70s artists, were about sex and drugs as well, but there was no MTV. MTV made it like in your face 24/7. And I think that that kind of has stuck with us, and it made it more prominent in people's conscious, the visual aspect of it, which you don't have as much with the 70s. You have some old magazine photos and things like that, but you don't have the same kind of thing that you have with the 80s. And I think it's that political correctness. I think that's all there is to say about that. Guys, you've been listening to Ludini Rock and Roll Circus, Rockin Rant. LudiniRockandRollCircus.com is the website. What do you think? What do you feel squeamish about 80s music? Do you feel kind of like it's silly or bad or cheesy or embarrassing? I want to know what you think about it. Should it remain in the past? Should bands try to resurrect that sound or not? I want to know what you think about it. We could talk about it next time on the Ludini Rock and Roll Circus. Out. Oh, sorry. You guys are still watching. I'm adding compression and all that sort of stuff right now. So it was okay. I felt a little distracted. But these are supposed to be fast and dirty. So that's what this is. It's fast and dirty, and that's what they're going to be. So I'm sure this will not be the first time this will not be the last time I visit this topic. I think it's a cool topic. So I am just kind of doing a couple little quick edits. Open new. I don't want to do that. Oh, I need to change this. All right, guys. Thanks for checking it out. Again, what do you think? Should is this music some kind of embarrassment, or should classic rock stations be picking it up and playing it because it's freaking amazing? I'd like to know what you guys think about it. I'm going to end the live portion for now, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Enjoy your weekend.